I've come to a place that is home to one of the richest and most dangerous criminal organizations in the world.
For me, it's terrifying. I'm clinging on inches to my life.
A place that attracts 8 million tourists every year.
There are people trying to stare me down.
I'm in Naples, Italy, to uncover the dark side of a beautiful city you're unlikely to read about in the travel brochures. Surrounded by the stunning scenery of Pompeii and Vesuvius, visitors flock to Naples in search of peace and relaxation. Drawn by an historical romanticism that everyone knows and loves. Home to 3 former popes and the birthplace of pizza, Naples has a rich and vibrant past that has seen its city streets granted World Heritage Site status. Over 400,000 British tourists visit Naples every year. But on these same streets, a war is raging. A criminal organization called the Camorra has grown into a rival for the state, developing a vice-like grip over the city with business interests totaling over £30 billion a year.
The official statistics state that organised crime in Italy is the biggest industry in the country. It's bigger than industry itself, bigger than agriculture, bigger than services, bigger than the financial sector.
There are estimated to be over 7,000 active Camorra members in Naples, who operate in about 100 separate clans. 5 times as many as the Sicilian mafia, known as the Cosa Nostra. They've been responsible for nearly 4,000 murders in the past 30 years, more than the entire Northern Ireland conflict. Now Italy, a member of the G8 and one of Western Europe's richest countries, has been forced to send in the troops to regain control of its streets. I'm here to find out why Naples has become the murder capital of Europe and how British citizens are funding its civil war. I wanted to find out what tourists arriving in Naples knew about the city's criminal links. So I went down to the port where over 8 million people arrive every year.
What do you know about Naples?
Nothing apart from they say see Naples and die.
That's what worries me. Nothing.
Pizza.
Fake bags. You can get lots of fake bags.
I love it. There's a lot of nice shopping.
Have you heard of the Camorra before? No?
Camaro? No, I haven't.
The police say that basically every single illegal activity and some legal activity here in this city is run by the Camorra. You no idea of that?
No idea.
Does that surprise you?
No.
It's their country, they can do what they like.
And in Naples, the Camorra are doing just that. A short drive from the port, their grip over the city is evident on the streets.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. This is a modern European country. And here you have this lawlessness here. You know, look at it. Honestly. Scenes like this, as pervasive this, you'd hardly recognize it if it was even in Calcutta or India. And here you are in one of the wealthiest kind of first world economies in the world. And look at it. The place is run by gangsters. And the state and the police and the force of law and order are really struggling. I think we're supposed to go down there. I mean, this is a public road actually blocked by rubbish. Not get bad.
The Camorra have been in charge of waste management for over 20 years, and now with the dumps full, garbage is spilling out onto the streets. I wanted to find out who the main players of the Camorra were and to try to speak to them. So I arranged to meet with the head of the flying squad, the man charged with bringing the Camorra to justice,
Pleasure, thanks.
Vittorio Pisani.
Who are your number one targets in the Camorra?
The most wanted camorristi include the two Russo brothers, Pasquale and Salvatore. This one is Scotti Pasquale. He has been a fugitive since 1984. This is Zaccaria Michele. His picture was taken in the early 1990s. These are the most important fugitives. I see that they put another fugitive on the list of the 30 most wanted fugitives. His name is Antonio Iovine. At this moment, he's one of the major bosses of the Casalesi clan.
Vittorio told me that my chances of meeting a Camorrista who would talk were slim. But he said I could accompany his elite high-speed motorbike unit that evening on a raid. As I left police headquarters, I passed more soldiers on the streets. Clearly, I'm in more than just a tough town here. I'm exposing a criminal organisation that is far deadlier than any street gang. But if I'm going to find out how the Camorra has become a way of life in this city, I'm going to have to delve deeper into the Neapolitan underworld. Coming up, I speed through Naples with the elite flying squad.
I don't want to die!
And visit the brutal murder scene of a priest. I'm in Naples, Italy, to find out why a civil war is raging on the streets of this beautiful tourist destination. Here they have a phrase, see Naples and die. It was coined 200 years ago to describe Naples' beauty, but now it alludes to the deadly power of the region's greatest menace, the city's criminal mafia, the Camorra. I was on my way to the police headquarters to meet up with the members of the elite flying squad who were planning a raid on a known drug and gun dealer. The team gathered in the briefing room. I knew the flying squad were an elite unit, but if I'd seen these faces on a wanted poster, I wouldn't have been surprised. The flying squad need to move quickly, and on the busy streets of Naples, that means cars are ditched in favour of high-powered motorbikes.
Naples logistics require the use of bikes instead of cars, especially in the center, because of the intense traffic, the tight lanes, and also because the majority of crimes are committed on scooters or motorbikes.
I also noticed that none of the officers had crash helmets, and some were carrying injuries.
I fell during a chase from two robbers that belonged to a local Camorra clan. During the chase, we fell on a turn and the street was wet. Someone had thrown the water to try and stop us catching the criminals.
Italy has almost twice as many deaths on roads compared to the UK. Nearly half of these are from motorbikes, so I asked the inspector in charge if I could get a helmet. But I was told it would be for my own safety if I didn't wear one.
They say they don't want us to wear helmets because the Camorra wear helmets when they're on hits, and police officers don't. So when we're in their company on their bikes, neither will we.
When 12 high-powered motorbikes scream out of the police HQ, it attracts a lot of attention. So we need to get to our target quickly before he is tipped off. This means that the few road rules there are in Naples are ignored. I hung on for my life as we raced through the back streets and narrow alleyways to get to the Camorrista's house. We were flying through red lights, up one-way streets and even on the pavement.
I don't want to die.
We arrived in San Giovanni in the notorious Convigliano quarter. And the team of bikes sped towards the house. This area, 7 kilometers out of the center, is a thriving drug district where clans sell everything from cocaine to cannabis. The police told me to refrain from talking in front of the Camorristas, so I didn't identify myself as a foreign journalist. This could have resulted in me becoming a target.
The guys are waiting, trying to gain entrance into a house where a major Camorra family lives. They're having problems, they're hanging out. This is a very strong neighborhood.
This was a house in the middle of one of Naples' poorest neighborhoods. Yet there was gold-plated china in the cabinets, and the walls were adorned with pictures of the suspected Camorrista and his family. Tellingly, the door was 3 inches of thick steel, and there was an escape hatch to the roof. But I couldn't help thinking that this was just an occupational hazard for the suspect. Despite having 20 police officers turning over his house, he wasn't worried.
Guarda, li fanno poco, giù una macchinetta. Io sono la casa. Ma che c'è soldi sta? Aspetta un po'. Ma che c'è soldi ti trovo? Sono pure qui.
Despite the vigorous search, the squad couldn't find anything and were forced to leave empty-handed. This was a perfect example of how difficult it is for the police to fight the war against the Camorra. To me, this guy looked like everything a Camorrista would be, living in a palace in a poor Neapolitan suburb, walls dripping with money. But the police, unable to find incriminating evidence, can do nothing but leave. Like many of the police units fighting against the Camorra in Naples, their war is restricted by the law, and the Camorra are only bound by their ruthless imagination.
I think it's fair to say they are an elite motorbike force, a squad the like of which I've never seen or encountered before, having been around the world, to see the bravery, the courage and the daring do without health and safety, because these guys are living and breathing a battle against a very dangerous and difficult force. And you know what? That has to breathe a little sense of kamikaze policing about it. And you know, this is what they do. And I'm just glad my shift is nearly over.
Before I arrived in Naples, I'd been warned by the Italian Justice Department that it wasn't a good time to come. A number of journalists had been targeted and placed under police protection because of their work uncovering crime in this city.
They're completely ruthless. That they're perfectly capable of launching, a bomb attack against a writer, a journalist. And so if you are a writer or a journalist, who's digging up today's news about the Camorra, yeah, you're certainly at risk.
It's Donald McIntyre from London.
I arranged to meet a Neapolitan journalist to find out how real the threat in Naples is.
A pleasure.
Rosaria Capiccione has been a reporter for 20 years in Naples and has recently been assigned 2 police bodyguards because of threats made against her life. Only 4 weeks before my arrival, even with 24-hour police protection, her house was burgled. Jewels and cash were left untouched. Only a plaque awarded for her journalism was taken. It was a sign, a message to try and keep Rosaria quiet.
When foreign journalists come in and ask the same questions, do they face the same threats?
If you write about murder, they don't get mad. But when you write about their business, things that haven't been discovered by the police or the law, that's when they get mad.
I wanted to know which areas tourists should avoid in Naples.
The areas of Scampia and Secondigliano are heavily compromised by the Camorra. The area of Casal di Principe in Caserta is even worse. My advice would be to only go with the police.
Casal di Principe is a suburb of Naples and only a 20-kilometre drive from the port. Vittorio at the mobile squad told me it's where some of Italy's most wanted criminals come from. I also found out that of the 20,000 residents there, 3,000 were under police surveillance and another 2,000 had already been arrested. It was also the place that the state identified as the major threat, sending in 500 troops to patrol its streets.
For a European country to surrender the civil streets to their national army, that is something extraordinary and exceptional, but it does tell a story of the threat that the Camorra pose.
I wanted to see how dangerous this town was, but because of threats to journalists and the volatility of the area, the police insisted I only went in with an escort. I met up with Silvana Giusti from the DIA, the anti-mafia police, on the edge of town. She told me they were also planning an operation targeting a known Camorra boss and offered to bring me along.
Let's go.
Okay.
Let's go.
My suspicions were aroused straight away. As I entered the town, I could see a lot of villas being built and expensive cars driving through the streets. Unbelievably, the unemployment figures for Casal di Principe are close to 90%. So where had all the money come from?
And up ahead, there are some troops, some army on the streets there.
We were heading to the town hall so Silvana and the DIA could get final permission to conduct their operation.
We're in front of the municipality of Casal di Principe because this morning we've got to go and formalize some paperwork to confiscate some properties owned by the Camorra. Not long ago there was a problem with a house that belonged to the Camorra that was being rented out to NATO.
This was a story that had made the news in the UK just before I arrived in Naples. Camorra kingpin Antonio Iovine, wanted for murder and one of Italy's top 30 fugitives, had been renting out one of his properties to a NATO officer. NATO is part funded by the British taxpayer to the tune of £132 million a year. So it amazed me to discover that British citizens were unknowingly funding this Camorra kingpin's war chest. Once the permits were granted, Silvana and the DIA could proceed to serve the warrant against the NATO house.
Here, within minutes of us arriving, there are people trying to stare me down from a very expensive Mercedes car, looking very wealthy, and then they pull the head away when the camera is faced with. So there's a definite attempt at intimidating us as a film crew and for me as a journalist.
I wanted to speak to the people living in this house to find out if they knew their landlord was from the Camorra.
Good morning.
I understand you've been supporting the Camorra by accident. Is that all right if we have a chat?
Yes.
Your story's been well reported that you accidentally, like a number of other NATO employees, found yourself renting from the Camorra.
Yeah, it was by pure accident. We have a great arrangement here. We live in a lovely home, and the landlord is a great individual. And out of the blue, we find Minister of Finance show up in our house one day and give us the bad news that the house was sequestered for anti-mafia reasons, which was a total shock. Now, granted, we knew that that Casal di Principe had a reputation of supporting the Camorra, but we never knew it was going to hit home.
As we left, we received more details about how NATO are inadvertently funding the Camorra.
So it seems, from our police sources who've just been in contact with the NATO top brass, it seems this case of renting from the Camorra is not just a one-off. The NATO top brass, we believe, according to police sources, think that up to 2,000 of their properties are rented from the Camorra at anything from 2,500 to 3,500 euros a month. And it means that up to 50 million euros every year of your taxpayers' money is fueling the coffers of the Camorra. That's extraordinary.
Coming up, I go to the biggest open-air drugs market in Europe.
You see the needles everywhere.
And two former Camorrista break the Omerta code of silence to talk to me. I'm in Naples, Italy, the murder capital of Europe and home to one of the richest criminal organizations on the planet. But their economic gain has been at the cost of over 4,000 lives, turning the streets of Naples into a bloodbath.
Once, an ambulance carrying a gunshot victim was stopped by the Camorra. The ambulance was attacked, and then they entered the ambulance and executed the patient.
The Camorra's control has led them to become a rival to the state. Part of the organised crime business in Italy, which turns over £1 trillion every year.
More rubbish.
The rubbish on the streets was down to the Camorra. Like the Sopranos, they're also involved in the waste management business. Now, with the city dumps full, it's spilling out onto the streets. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. For the past 20 years, the Camorra have secretly brought down toxic waste from the industrial north of Italy and dumped it in and around the city of Naples. Now, with the poison buried beneath this lush agricultural farmland, it's seeping to the surface, affecting the region's biggest export, buffalo mozzarella.
The buffalo graze in these pastures, but because the land is contaminated, dioxins have been passed into the food chain and eventually into the milk. It's scary to eat the local foods knowing what we know today. I am scared of eating it. I know what's happening around me.
But the dumping of toxic waste doesn't just affect the livestock. Amongst the residents that live near the toxic dumps, cancer cases have risen 30%.
They're all contaminated. The pollution here is comparable to the radioactive pollution in Chernobyl. We used to think of Naples as a picture on a postcard. It's very beautiful. Our region has been destroyed. The Camorra destroyed it.
Nobody knows how much has been dumped over the years. Nobody knows what actually has been dumped or where it's been dumped. And the other real problem is no one's too keen to find out those answers because it's only going to be bad news. One, you're going to have to clear it up. Two, it's going to damage everything from tourism all the way to farm exports. It's just a disaster. And of course, to deal with it, you're going to have to take on the Camorra. Look. The Garden of Italy, what a disgrace. What a disgrace.
But the Camorra aren't just about toxic mud and radioactive sludge. Their business tentacles also stretch to the glamorous world of fashion, where British tourists are again lining their pockets. Many Neapolitan textile factories are controlled by the Camorra, and they use them to make fake, high-end Italian fashion items. These fake products are then distributed around the world, but you can also buy them on the streets of Naples.
€20. And how much would it normally cost?
But wherever you shop in Naples, there is a chance you will be subsidizing the Camorra. One of their biggest earners is the mafia tax, or piso, a monetary gift that is demanded from shopkeepers in return for protection. Silvana Fuscito runs a hardware store, and like 80% of other shop owners in the city, she has been menaced by the Camorra for the piso tax. When she refused to pay, the Camorra then turned up on her doorstep.
They would come into the shop with their guns, put them on the counter, and say, "Pay up or we'll shoot you. If you don't pay, we'll blow you up." We didn't believe they would. Our shop is under a 7-story building. We didn't expect them to put hundreds of lives at risk.
One winter's evening, the Camorra poured petrol through the letterbox of the shop and burnt it down.
Our life changed completely within 24 hours. And not just our personal life, but Naples changed. It was a sort of miracle which woke up all Neapolitans and even all Italians to a problem that none was willing to deal with.
Silvana became the figurehead for the fight against Piso, an industry that earns the Italian mafias over $44 billion a year. But because of her strong stance, Silvana has been forced to accept 2 armed police guards wherever she goes, proving that if you stand up against the Camorra in Naples, you will need police protection.
Naples is a tormented city, a city where nothing works. It's a city that is going adrift.
I've discovered that the Camorra's business tentacles stretch deep into the legal Neapolitan economy. But like all criminal empires, they are also involved in the drugs trade, an industry that earns the Camorra nearly €500,000 every day. I was heading to Scampia, the biggest open-air drugs market in Europe. This is a place not marked on the tourist trail, but only 10 kilometers from the port.
Now we're coming into Scampia, which is a stronghold of the Camorra. And it's pretty dank and dark and desolate. But we've been told that by the police not to come in here by ourselves. So we've had to talk to our sources to let those who run this area, the capos, the family bosses, know that we're in here doing a documentary. And here, on the entrance to Scampia, we have a police and an army roadblock. Now that is extraordinary. The civil street, I've seen this in Northern Ireland, you see it in Africa, but you don't see it in any other place in Europe. Extraordinary that the police come in here with an army escort.
Scampia is an area fully controlled by the Camorra clans. Before we could enter, our sources had to speak with the capos in charge, who'd given us a window to film in the infamous La Vella estate. The conditions were that we didn't identify any Camorra and that we didn't bring in the police. We were going to have to do this on our own. Placed on the main roads in Scampia, and all the entrances to the estate, the Camorra have lookouts who signal to their bosses if an unknown car enters. As we drove in, we caught their attention and were forced to stop.
Cut filming, yeah? Cut filming. Stop. One moment.
The sentinels approached the car. We tried to negotiate with them, but as we did, we were surrounded.
And now we're surrounded by drug dealers and drug addicts, and
We made a call to the capo of the area, but then suddenly things turned nasty. The camera had been wrenched from the car and we were about to follow.
Okay.
Thankfully, our contact calmed the situation down and we left quickly.
So we've had a bit of an incident. One of the sentinels in the Scampia Lavellas called us over, stopped us from filming, took our camera, took the tape, threatened to take the camera away for good. It was very, very aggressive. I don't think we were in danger, but certainly our equipment was. We'd already hidden all the recorded tapes in the car and replaced the tape in the camera with a blank tape. So, you know, the worst was going to happen and we were going to lose an expensive camera and a tape. But as it happened, we talked our way out of it, and now we're considering going back. We'll see if we can get in without being abused or harassed.
After negotiating with our contact, we were finally allowed into the estate. This is the toughest and most lawless housing estate in Europe. With 50% of the population unemployed, the Camorra can thrive here. They earn up to 200 million euros every year from drug sales in this area, and it's the place where drug addicts from across Naples and Italy come to buy the cheapest high-grade heroin and crack cocaine in the EU.
Now, even just a random place, you see the needles everywhere, right? A square metre, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I mean, there's about 12 needles.
As we were filming on the stairs of La Vella, we were joined by 2 sentinels who were under orders to watch us. They didn't want to be identified. These 2 young, low-level Camorristas were at the bottom of the ladder, but clearly they were already earning enough to dress well and were probably armed. We were told that they were here to keep an eye on what we were filming and to make sure we didn't go anywhere we shouldn't. They were our Camorra escort in the slums of La Vella.
If you behave properly with us, you'll be okay. But if you fuck up or do something stupid, there'll be problems.
We kill a lot of people in Naples. We see a lot of dead bodies.
Just below these flats are the drug-dealing piazzas, where every day thousands of addicts come to buy heroin and crack cocaine. The Camorra wouldn't allow us to film there, but we secured this archive of what lay below.
The addicts come to La Vella to get their heroin. They hang out on the stairs. They leave their syringes on the stairs, near the children. They come from everywhere. Salerno, Rome, Milan. Then there are the ones from this area. Someone's father, someone's brother.
Okay.
As we were leaving, we met a former addict and resident who told us what it was like to live in La Vella.
We find people dead all the time. They buy the heroin and then go to the stairwells where they inject it. From morning to evening they do it. Everything seems quiet, but that's not how it is. You don't see what's below. Come up. Your mum is upstairs. This is the daughter of a friend of mine. Don't worry. Go slowly.
La Vella was a hellhole. A haven for drug addicts. And yet still, people were living amongst it, stumbling over bodies as they took their kids to school. I was happy to get out. As we were leaving, we got a call from a contact we'd received a major breakthrough in our quest to talk to a Camorra member.
As we're discovering the omerta, that code of silence, really is very much alive on these streets. No one wants the secrets of the Camorra to pass by their lips. No one wants to be accused of betraying the secrets of the Camorra. So it's very difficult to get anyone to talk openly about their work and how they operate. Now, we have managed to track down two ex-Camoristas, two ex-members of the Camorra, who are going to talk to us about what they've done and the work they do. And it'll be fascinating to see just how far they let us into that inner circle, the inner world of this very mysterious mafiosi organization.
This was my chance to speak to two people who'd been involved in some of the worst criminal violence to play out on the streets of any European country. I travelled back towards the city where they agreed to speak to me.
What is the life of a Camorrista like?
When I was a Camorrista, I didn't think about anything. Every moment of my life, I thought it was my last. It was tragic. It was sad. It didn't help if you thought you had a future. A Camorrista doesn't think he has a future. He lives in the present. I liked it a lot. I really liked buying myself designer clothes by Armani, Valentino, and having my pockets full of money. I liked walking with my friends, and anyone who looked at me had to lower their head. All the adoration made me feel like the Pope.
Well, what was it like for both of you? What was it like when there was infighting within the Camorra?
We used to kill people in the center of Naples, as if it was normal.
People are scared. They're worried that something might happen. You can feel the tension. And it is very dangerous when there are these wars going on.
Usually in a war, when the fight starts, people hide. And it's difficult to catch them. But in a Camorra war, there are killings every day. We are at war with ourselves. You don't know if I'm your friend or your enemy. In Naples at the moment there are 40 to 50 wars going on. Wars in Naples never end. There are pauses, but no end.
There's so much to take in from a meeting with the Camoristas, but for me, one of the most crucial parts is that this city is really still at war. There is just a very uneasy peace declared, and it seems it could just take the smallest incident to trigger off another bloodbath. And that's not coming from me, the police, another journalist. It's coming from the Camoristas, the ex-Camoristas themselves, the soldiers who fought that bloody and terrible war.
Coming up, I go back to Castel del Principe, the scene of the Camorra's bloodiest crime. And I ask what the future holds for this beautiful city. To the state, forcing the government to station troops on its streets to try and wrestle back control. Their reign has led them to terrorize the people of Naples for over 200 years. Over 4,000 people have been killed, but possibly the worst example was the death of the priest Don Pepe Diana. I returned to Castel del Principe with Silvana and the Italian mafia police to visit his church, St. Nicholas of Bari, the scene of his murder. The new padre agreed to take me around, the first time cameras have been allowed in to film.
This is the altar where Don Pepe used to celebrate his service and from which he would hear his word. The place where he was killed is just over here.
Don Pepe Diana was a padre that stood up against the Camorra in its fiercest stronghold, Castel del Principe. He refused to bury the Camorra dead and regularly denounced the church's very own omerta towards the mafia in Italy. Then one morning, as he prepared for Mass, a Camorra hitman entered the church.
Don Pepe was in this room. This used to be his office. He would come from over here and walk this way towards the altar. The killer entered through this door and made his way to the altar. As soon as the hitman found him, he walked up and killed him.
Don Pepe was murdered in his own church. 2 bullets to the head and 2 in the face. A textbook Camorra hit, warning others not to speak out.
After the murder, the community was outraged. The people embraced the figure of Don Pepe Diana. And from that moment onwards, he became an important symbol in the fight against the mob.
Anche un'immagine importante della lotta per la legalità.
The future for this town, this little city, is it still with the Camorra or the church?
Allora, il futuro di questo paese deve essere necessariamente
The future of this town needs to be with the good, with legality, and the church needs to keep talking about this. The future will be with the Camorra for those who still want to be with it. But we hope that this number will become lower and lower.
Outside the church, I spoke to Silvana about this brutal murder.
And tell us about the investigation into the murder of the priest.
Sì, le investigazioni nella morte di Peppe Diana hanno
The investigation into the murder of Peppe Diana led to the arrest of Quadrano Giuseppe. He was the killer.
Noi lo arrestammo, in particolare.
Myself and the DIA went to Valencia to arrest him, and he became a super grass.
Collaboratore di giustizia.
I also wanted to find out what the future held for Naples.
An army on the civil streets of any European country is an extraordinary thing. It shows you what a big battle you have to fight.
Yes, it's an extraordinary thing.
Yes, it's an extraordinary thing, especially in Europe. But there is a war between the Camorra and the state, because the Camorra is a parallel state.
In my time in Naples, I've seen how the Camorra has grown from a mere gang into a powerful criminal industry, taking advantage of the poverty-stricken Neapolitan people. British tourists who come to Naples will be touched by the Camorra, whether they're buying a pizza, coffee, or a new handbag. The lure of money, the glamour, and the prestige are difficult for the government to fight. And by placing troops on the streets, they have admitted how huge the problem they face is. Many Neapolitans support the Camorra more than the government, and only when that stops will the Italian state win this war.
And Donald heads to a not-so-gay Paris next Tuesday at the same time. After the break, Worf is trying to convince his wimp of a son to be a warrior. Next Generation action coming up.